Treasurer. I can say good morning because it's 11:59, so good morning.
So I'll say it back quickly so I can say good morning as well. Good morning.
We have your written testimony. So
Rashia Johnson, I will just be quick. Good morning. I'm Rashia Johnson, City Treasurer. Joining me today is Raymond Hill, Deputy Treasurer for Banking and Investment, as well as Matthew Bowman, Executive Director of the Sinking Fund. I'm pleased to provide my testimony on the City Treasurer's Office for Fiscal Year 2020 operating budget. You have my written testimony. I'm happy to answer any questions on.
Okay, thank you very much. Everybody's learning this now. Just very quickly, go to questions. Okay. Ms. Johnson, there was a lot of talk last year about the whole reconciliation of the bank accounts, and I've seen you've come obviously way down from about 40 million to about 500,000. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Can you just briefly kind of go into how that was all done, and do you feel confident that now those procedures can stay in place to keep the figures more in line, if you will?
Yes. So currently we are fully reconciled and current on all of the accounts that the City Treasurer's Office is responsible for, and there's about approximately 77 accounts that we're responsible for. We have processes in place to making sure that all the accounts are assigned to an accountant. They have backup when they're out. There's cross-training, and we also are in the process of putting internal controls and procedures in place in the Treasurer's Office to make sure that what happened historically that we inherited but took care of never happens again.
Okay, thank you. And I know I think there's a monthly update to City Council on that?
Yes.
Okay. And you include the information on that of those procedures so Council kind of knows what's going on with that?
The procedures are not finalized, but
Okay.
we can share the finalized procedures once they're completed, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just one more question for me. The Federal Reserve, as you know, been raising interest rates consistently over the past 2 years. And how does that policy impact our floating rate bonds or swaps? Or does it?
So right now, floating rate debt SIFMA is not one for one with the Fed raising interest rates, but we've seen a small uptick, but we've also been monitoring our variable rate debt, which is a small component of our outstanding debt, to see where we could actually fix out some of our variable rate debt with no additional cost to the city versus carrying the variable rate debt.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, Ms. Johnson. Councilman Dom?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
First, I want to say that I'm pleased that we accounted for most of the money. We're down to a very small amount of the 33. And the 7 accounts that were not reconciled, which was one of my bigger concerns also, I think through the reconciliation task force, we're down to like 99 or almost 100% of all accounts reconciled?
All the accounts are reconciled.
All of them are reconciled.
Yes.
Great. And so then I have some other questions. In the consolidated cash account, roughly how much goes through that account on a monthly basis?
That is on the consolidated cash account. Monthly activity is about 1.3 billion, just in and out, moving throughout that account.
Okay. And currently, do all funds go into the consolidated cash account, all receipts and everything?
All receipts related to the city itself, yes, but of course, like airport and water.
Right, separate.
Are separate, yes.
And any idea how many bank accounts we use to hold that consolidated cash account?
Do we have that? The number of bank accounts for our consolidated cash, it's approximately 4, but let me just get the exact number of those accounts.
And one of the reasons why I asked that is because that's such a big account in the city And I know that in the prior reconciliations, I think there was, if I recall, there were 3 years, like from 14 to 17, a lot of it before your time, that was not reconciled in that account. And I want to make sure that we're on top of that. That's a big account.
So there's some small one-off accounts, but there's one main account, but they are all reconciled and continue to be reconciled.
And so I'm going to just share the numbers that I saw that I didn't really want to share last year, which concerned me. And that was that this account had $1.3 billion going in. And if it wasn't reconciled for 36 months, not you, but the department was behind $46 billion. You had $1.3 billion a year times 12 months in a year times 3 years was $46 billion behind just this one account. That's why I want to make sure we have a lot of focus on it.
Yep, so since the time when we had put a plan in place, and the plan is currently working, where we've added additional staff that have responsibility with the consolidated cash account. We do, as we receive the receipts, we do daily reconciliations, and we have someone specifically assigned to that with backup, as well as we have one person that's responsible for doing the larger monthly reconciliation with backup as well, with an accounting manager, as well as the deputy for banking and investment that supervises the entire process.
Okay. And by the way, I commend you and the department and the Reconciliation Task Force, I think that was called? Because at the end of the day, when you added up all the accounts and multiplied it by the months not reconciled, we had $113 billion, which was a monumental task to reconcile, $113 billion. That was over a 7-year period, some of the accounts.
Yep.
But, the general disbursement account was $43 billion not reconciled. So after a while, it became like real money. But I'm glad it got resolved. That's the main thing, and you guys did a good job. So I just want to put that on the record. Thank you. Do we commingle, well, let me ask this question. Do these bank accounts match up with how funds are managed in Famous to make it easier to reconcile?
So, not exactly. So the way it doesn't line up one for one with the fund as well as the accounts.
Is there any way to fix that?
As we're looking to get a new system and working closely with the accounting department, central accounting, I'm sure we can streamline it as best as possible.
That would make it easier, though, wouldn't it?
It would.
Yeah. And do we commingle any funds, like grants funds? Are they held in separate accounts?
What? I'm sorry?
Do we commingle any funds, and are grant funds held in separate bank accounts?
All of our grants are deposited into the consolidated cash account.
So we don't hold the grants in separate escrow accounts?
Only in times where they are required. Some grants have special specifications, and we would do that, but because of the amount of accounts that we have and we have to monitor, mostly grants go into our consolidated cash account.
And do you feel, as our treasurer, that you have enough staff currently to handle the obligations and duties of your department?
Currently, yes. I'm in a position right now of hiring one additional body per the report that the outside accounting put together to be the liaison between the Treasury and the accounting. So I think that will fully complement the Treasury staff at that point.
How long does it take you to hire somebody right now?
Sometimes it can be a several-month process.
Several months.
Yes.
Do people wait to hear from you? I mean, if I was applying for a job and you told me several months, I'd be going somewhere else.
We've been lucky that the candidates that we thought would be the best fit were available.
Okay. In your testimony on page 4, it shows that in fiscal year 18, there's an amount of $6.3 million in contracts. And it's almost $4 million higher than fiscal year 17. And I was just wondering what that would be for. So fiscal year 17, it shows roughly just over 2, and then fiscal year 18, it goes to $6.3 million. It's a $4 million increase. Do you know what that would be for?
You said on page 4. Let me just.
Yeah, it's in contracts.
Okay. So, our contracts increase, one, based upon the volume of transactions we have with bonds, as well as we had an additional one-time contract with the outside accounting firm.
Was that for the reconciliation?
That's correct.
That was like 500,000.
That's correct.
This is like 4 million.
So again, when we account for in our contracts our bond deals, the more bond deals we do in a year, the more money that has gone out.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank
today.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Before we go to the other council people, I'm going to make a suggestion if nobody has an objection. Since the sinking fund is represented here, they're next. Why don't you give any testimony you have? Just put something on the record. Then if there's questions for either or, they can be asked at the same time. Okay? Sir, please identify yourself and proceed.
Good afternoon. Matthew Bowman, Executive Director of the Sinking Fund Commission. The Sinking Fund budget for 2020 is proposed a general fund of $296.7 million, which is just an increase of $1.67 million compared to fiscal year 2019. And the all funds budget totals $656.65 million, which is actually a decrease of approximately $22 million from 2019. And with that, I'd be happy to take any additional questions.
Great. Thank you. Let me go to Councilman Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to state for the record, and just have a few questions, but I just want to put on the record the work that our city treasurer has done over the years in helping the city of Philadelphia. Even prior to coming to this current position, when you were in the private sector and the city was going through a process of trying to sell PGW, but it's at that point we still need to bring in new money into Philadelphia Gas Works. You had suggested a commercial paper program. That was something that was beneficial for PGW. We could not go to market because we were in a process of the previous administration trying to sell PGW, so markets were somewhat closed. So you recommended to the city to use a commercial paper program that was beneficial for the city and allowing us to provide resources for PGW at that time. In addition, that concept was also borrowed by the airport because the airport was in the process of trying to do a capacity expansion project, and they also could not go to the market in the type of ways they would normally do for bond offerings. And so the airport also borrowed that commercial paper program idea. And so it was that type of creative ideas that you brought to the city even before you coming into city treasurer. Then in your early term as city treasurer, you noticed the reconciliation issues, which from my observation came from a lack of resources. Over the years, many administrations have been able to balance budgets by not hiring people. And so early in your term as city treasurer, you noticed these reconciliation issues were a concern and brought that to the attention of the administration. From there, it became additional media coverage, and I know that you had spent a lot of time working on that issue in spite of the fact you were also going through a pregnancy at the time. So I just wanted to put that on the record and thank you for the work that you've done in that regard. Also, some people in this body know I've been working on the issue of public banking for the past couple of years, working with your office in that regard, and I want to thank you for that perspective. We're now moving to a selection process with a committee that's a diverse committee from people in different perspectives and backgrounds to select a consultant to help us evaluate and study the feasibility of public banking in the city of Philadelphia and how we can move forward in that regard. I just have a few quick questions I want to ask you. On page 3 of your testimony, you talked about debt management and how the office will manage new and outstanding city debt. Can you give me some numbers in reference to the refunding for GO for spring of 2019, summer 2019, which is new money, revenue bonds, general obligation, as well as the water and wastewater revenue bonds, and the paid new money, and then, hopefully we won't need a TRAN, but we always do need a TRAN. But if you could give me on those first four, the GO refunding and also the new money, those amounts.
So the par amounts of the transactions?
Yeah,
Okay.
roughly the range.
Okay, so the GO refunding is approximately $190 million. The new money GO bonds is approximately 356. Water, wastewater, is that 250? Yeah, water new money is approximately 250 to 300. Haven't finalized that yet. And then the paid, and that's not new money, that's actually a refunding
Oh, is that
for
refunding?
savings. And
okay.
that is approximately 180 million.
180 million, okay. And then also, I see you're going to be doing a RFP for, I guess that's an FA for water,
That's correct.
and then also an FA for GO, and also bond accounts for the TRAN. But I just have one other question I had in reference to, on page 9 of your budget testimony, the contracting experience. I see various firms, but one firm somewhat not as familiar with, Hawkins, Delafield, and Wood, which was used as disclosure counsel for GO.
Yes.
What's that background of that firm? Because that's a firm I'm not as familiar with.
Hawkins, Delafield, and Wood, we use them for disclosure counsel here in the city. They have also co-disclosure counsel, but the particular person is one of the experts that help write the regs with regards to disclosure. So we thought he would be, Hawkins would be, John McNally would be the best one to help to assist the city in crafting our disclosures.
Okay. And where are they based out of?
Out of Washington, D.C.
DC. Okay. All righty. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Taubenberger, please.
Much, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Johnson, thank you
Yes.
very much, and thank you for being available to myself and my staff over the year, and that's appreciated greatly. I was going to ask you and comment on the reconciliation now seems to be working very, very well. I think the way it looks to me, you've done a super job here. There is 500,000 that are unreconciled at this point. How does that stand with other cities? Is that better than most, or are we about average, or?
Well, one, there's always transaction in flux, so a lot of it is timing.
Okay.
So, talking with other cities, there's always going to be a time where you have some variance,
Correct.
but we are working to see if we can, chop away at that. But there's always going to be a little variance from month to month because of timing and when transactions go in and out of the bank and when the bank closes their cut off their statements.
But other major cities would have the same situation?
Yes.
And we'd be about, I guess, average, or maybe a little better, or?
I'm hoping that we're average
Okay,
or a
that's
little
good.
better. Yes.
Well, I know you have it's hard work what you do. You had said sometimes it takes several months to hire someone.
Yes.
And why do you think is the holdup? Is that because you need to do a little more investigation, if is the right person, or is what if it takes several months to hire? Like Councilman Dom said, they may go away, but is there a holdup on our end that we could help you with?
Sometimes it depends on. Sometimes the process can go a little bit faster on the exempt side because there's a little bit more flexibility. But then also, for an example, with our countings, you have to make sure that the lists are available and the lists are current to pull someone off one of the civil service lists. So sometimes that can take some time.
Okay. And the last question I have, essentially, is there anything we can do in the city council with rules and regulations and such that we're empowered with to help your job become easier? Something this is a dialogue as far as I'm concerned. I want to hear what's on your mind. How can we help you, become better?
I think working closely with council as we have over
Okay.
this has been helpful and will continue
Great.
to be helpful to mitigate any roadblocks. But I think right now we are moving in the right direction with regards to making the policies and
Great.
procedures and having them standardized for the treasurer's office.
Excellent. That's good to know. I thank you very much, and thank you for a good job.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. See, I have around 12 questions. No, I'm just playing. All right, we're good. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to do pensions next.